What's something a teacher did at school that you're still mad about? I went to a high school that had a uniform. We were supposed to have our shirts tucked in at all times. I was walking into English class, between bells, tucking in my shirt because it came up out of my skirt while I was taking my cardigan off. My English teacher stopped me and asked, "Were you just tucking your shirt?" And I told her I was, and she promptly wrote me up for having had my shirt untucked. It was utter balls and I lost total respect for her. Some teacher called me a waste of time and space during the end of school performance because I was too shy to sing. I didn't pick a singing role. I was like 10-11 years old. That is 100% the teacher's fault. I was once told I had broken the computer and felt scared using a computer ever since. 17 years married to a very talented software developer and 15 years in a technical role, and I only just have my confidence back. Science teacher was a lazy crap that didn't even interact with us in any way. She'd write page numbers from a textbook on the whiteboard and not even talk to us until the inspectors came, of course, when she'd have a wonderful interactive lesson planned for us. I was old enough to realize this was bulls and refused to do any work unless she actually asked us to do so with her own freaking mouth. This went on until she got my parents involved. I told them everything, and they had a chat to the head about her. I don't know if anything came of it. Had a teacher similar to this, would give us printed worksheets all day every day, and I'm sure I said one time that it was a waste of paper. Never anything fun or interactive. All she did was dart around the room watching all of us sipping her cups of tea. Those freaking cups of tea. I had a friend in college who really went above and beyond on a programming assignment. She thought of everything. Part of the teacher's test was trying to break the program. Done in class as a presentation thing. The teacher couldn't break it and marked her down for not following the rules. What my friends did was outside the scope of what was required, but nowhere in the rules did say not to, and if anything should have been given extra points for really digging in and learning more. A boy in my class, about 8 years old, had dyslexia, so one time, the teacher gave a dictation. He had spelled all the words wrong and she was really mad at him, just shouting to him in the middle of the class that he should have tried harder, he didn't do well enough, etc. He was crying, and from that moment on I really hated her. My second grade teacher told me I wouldn't amount to anything and would never graduate high school because I have dyslexia. Joke's on her. I graduated top of my class at my university for both my majors. The teacher got up in the middle of my presentation, took my paper out of my hand, and in front of the entire class told me that I had plagiarized my assignment from the internet. The thing is, we didn't have the internet at that time at my house. I had worked through the entire assignment while talking about my ideas with my dad. It was super embarrassing. Made me feel better to learn that the next day my dad went into class and yelled at the teacher in the staff room in front of all his peers. I didn't have a problem with that teacher after that. Some teachers have a hard time accepting that some children who are articulate or smarter than they are. This is too good. Must have cheated is their default setting. Last grade in high school, there was a chemistry teacher in my school who had two different sections of the same class, both with too many students due to amazing provincial budget management. My class, this guy routinely called the dumb kids up to the board and made them sweat in front of everyone when they clearly didn't have an answer, shouted at kids who didn't study, and was generally being an angry dong. It was normal for kids to just walk away to drop out of it when we shuttled between the classroom and lab. I wasn't one of the dumb kids, so I didn't get much direct abuse, but I ended up dropping because I was sick of being constantly stressed and angry. At first I figured he was just being an butthole to clear out the extra students, and I hated him for that, but I could at least understand that he was put in a bad position. I later found out about the other class, overloaded with kids, like mine was, but no angry outbursts. He played music during quiet study times, and generally treated everyone nicely. The guy was running a freaking experiment without telling anyone. 26 years later, I'm still pee off when I see him around the community. Edit. Typo. I really hate this. A teacher can literally be the difference in a child passing a subject, especially in STEM related subjects. Kids who are struggling but still have an interest in the subject are more likely to improve over time so long as they have the right support. In about 1966 when I was 6 our class was making some sort of valentines with multiple folds on which we were supposed to write little Valentine's Day messages. The teacher was wandering between the desks while scanning our projects. At one point I guess I had written on the wrong side of one of the folds. So she stopped at my desk, grabbed my hand and slammed it down forcefully on the desktop. It hurt and was very embarrassing. Frick her. I hope the 54 years she has lived since then have been miserable. If it is any consolation, she's probably dead by now. Shaming me for not knowing how to spell my 12-letter last name. First grade. Edit. Peeing my pants because my teacher wouldn't allow me to use the bathroom. Third grade. Some of the kids in one of my neighborhood schools were getting bladder infections because the teacher would not let them go to the bathroom. On the last day of school my homeroom teacher took me out into the hall and told me she thought it was her moral obligation to tell me I'm a horrible person. No specifics, no advice, just I'm a horrible person. I was never in trouble in school, always tried my best to be kind, and was even the valedictorian. I spent the rest of the period pretending I wasn't crying because my friends still had a final in the afternoon they were studying for and needed to pass. The fact that you faked happiness after that to help your friends pass a final proves you're not a horrible person. Homework in 2nd grade was to learn our parents' real names instead of mom and dad. I came in and told the class my mom had a different last name than me. The teacher said no, her last name is Jutsu like yours and your daddy. That's what happens when you get married. I told her that it was just me and my mom and that my daddy never lived with us. She told the class that meant they needed to pray for me and my mommy because we were going to heck. That was my last day at that school. I took a very difficult chemistry class in high school, the kind where only one student gets an A and you work your butt off to get a B. I had maintained a B for most of the year, when I forgot to write my name on a test. Teacher was an extreme hardass and gave me a 0 for not writing my name, which brought my grade down to an F. To get my grade back up, he allowed me to ask for extra quizzes for the entire class, and every time we'd have the quiz he would announce to the class that it was because of me and they could all thank me. God, the revenge fantasies I had to get him back. Little me was obsessed with two things, dinosaurs until I saw Jurassic Park, and space. I was obsessed. In 3rd grade we had an assignment where we had to talk about orbits. I wrote examples like the moon orbits the earth orbits the sun, and the sun orbits the Milky Way. My teacher gave me a D and refused to listen to me that what I had said was true. We didn't have computers in the classroom so there was no way to look it up. I tried to bring a book with it the next day but she blew me off. Joke's on her though because I'm about to get my PhD in astronomy. Edit. I wasn't quite clear in what I wrote. She didn't believe the sun orbiting around the center of the Milky Way. She wasn't anti-Copernican. Reddit has taught me a lot about the misinformation that's spread by elementary school teachers who aren't qualified to talk about things like this. Never experienced it myself but comments like this never fail to make me angry. Of course, not isolated to teachers, they are just common cases since they're trusted to know everything, even if they absolutely definitely don't. When I was in 5th grade and my little sister was in 2nd grade, she wanted to pick some apple blossoms for her teacher. When she presented the little bouquet to her teacher, the teacher flipped out, lectured her for 10 minutes about why she shouldn't go on people's lawns to pick flowers, then threw the blossoms away in front of her. My sister was devastated, and I found her on the playground, crying. The apple blossoms were from our apple tree, in our front yard. First and last time I had ever yelled at a teacher. Totally worth the office referral. In kindergarten we had a bathroom log and the kid before me did not sign this log and put scissors down the toilet which caused it to clog. Since I was the last one on the log, I was blamed for it by the teacher and it was never me. Dumb teacher. Not gonna lie, thought bathroom log was slang for poop. Primary school teacher asked me what the biggest number possible is. I said numbers go on forever so there is no biggest number. My dad had told me that fact and it was interesting so I remembered it. The teacher told me that was stupid and proceeded to grab one of the really cheap school calculators and type in as many nines as could fit on the display. She then held it up in my face and said there, that's the biggest number there is. That still annoys me to this day. I was terrible at maths as I'd been moved up to the top class and couldn't keep up. The teacher knew I was a donkey and would always ask me to make sure I'm listening, yet would laugh along with everyone else when I didn't know an answer or would get it wrong. Graded the boys and girls differently. She was my middle school history and speech teacher, and we knew she was grading the boys much more harshly than the girls. We couldn't prove it while I was at that school, but we knew. A couple years after my class graduated, a group of students who had the same thoughts set her up in a grading sting. Essentially, 2 boys and 2 girls wrote the same paper for an assignment. Not literally the same, because that would have been cheating. But they all argued the same points in the same way, just with different wording and structure in their papers. The boys got C's and the girls got A's. They took the papers to the headmaster and had him read them with all of this in mind. She was asked to resign shortly thereafter. What still pisses me off is that nobody believed us when I was in school there. It was a serious source of stress for me then too, since I was very motivated by my grades and just could not figure out why I was struggling so much with her classes. I was the only junior in the class. The rest were jock type seniors. I was the only one to get a C in the class while the rest got A's. It was ridiculous because the teacher couldn't justify my getting a C. Edit. I had an average of about 91% in high school, and that was my first and only C. This is extra fricked up because a lot of competitive colleges and universities have a policy that disqualifies students who have even one C on their transcripts. So, this teacher theoretically could have ruined your chances at your dream school because of this. A college professor in 2017. Someone mentioned an African country during discussion. Prof turned to the only black person in our class and said, "Maybe X knows about that?" The guy stared at the professor in disbelief and replied, "I'm from Germany. I'm from Michigan." I had a second grade teacher, Miss B, that I just didn't like, and she didn't really like me either. But I was a good student and generally well behaved, so I kept my head down and did what I needed to do. When teacher conferences came along, my mom went in to talk to her, and this teacher told my mother that I was a braggart and that I told all the other students how much smarter I am and other statements which made me look like a conceited little brat. The thing is, none of it was true, not one word. To this day, I have no idea why she fabricated the lies and told them to my mother, and it still rankles me. That said, when my mom talked to me about it, I told her that it was completely made up and no such thing happened. My mom believed me 100%. She had never received any kind of report like that from any other teacher and never did for the rest of my school years. This same teacher gave me points off on a phonics worksheet because I colored a piece of cake blue with light blue frosting because my mom had just made me a blue cake for my recent birthday at my request. I get the paper back and she marked points off for the blue cake. I asked why and she looked at me and said, "Matter of factly, cake isn't blue." I said, "Yes, it is. My mom made me one for my birthday with blue frosting. She did it with food coloring in a nasty tone. She just said, 'Get back to your seat.'" Tappy. Now, almost 40 years later, I'm still like, WTF Miss B? Some people should not be working with children, and Miss B was definitely one of them. Had a teacher in high school science that made a girl cry for not picking up a pencil to write notes. When I said he was being extreme, he asked if I was her protector. I told a friend that it would be funny if we put a "kick me" sign on my brother's back, so she did it. The teacher caught her and my friend got scared and said that I made her do it. Having a known sibling rivalry with him, I got the punishment instead of her. I never told her to do it. I only said it would be funny because "kick me" signs are funny in cartoons. The teacher made me stand in front of the whole class with my hands behind my head while everyone else got to kick me as hard as they wanted for 2 minutes. A whole group of relentless 8-10-year-old children gathered around me and kicked me as many times as they wanted to, as hard as they wanted to. Why? Because they were allowed to, and it was probably pretty fun to be on their side of the situation. I never told my parents because I was afraid of getting in trouble a second time, and I felt like that had been punishment enough. TLDR, teacher let the entire class kick me as hard as they could for 2 full minutes. What the frick? That's ridiculously messed up. Gave me a bad end of year report out of pure spite because she didn't like me and thought me using computers was equivalent to messing around with toys. I quote, "Zerby would rather play with computers than concentrate on schoolwork." Incidentally, I passed her class with high grades and never caused her any trouble. Every other teacher and my headmaster commented on how hard I'd worked all year and how much I'd matured. HMMPH. Jokes on her. I have a career in IT now. That playing with computers worked out. I was sitting in a desk with a bunch of papers that the last person that used it left behind. One of them fell to the floor. The teacher was sick, so a substitute that looked like a Karen was there that day. I got a disciplinary report because I was throwing paper to classmates. I had a teacher when I was 10 that never let me go to the restroom. Like I would ask and she wouldn't let me. So I ended up having a lot of accidents at school and my parents had to go to the school and talk to her. She still never let me go, so my parents told me to just get up and leave if she didn't let me. My English teacher in high school was the most disorganized person ever. She always had crap laying all over her classroom and never knew where anything was. She lost multiple students' papers all the time. One day she lost my paper and told me I didn't turn it in, and I argued with her that I absolutely did. She wasn't having it, so I got up in the middle of class, said, "This is freaking bulls," and walked out. She called my math teacher, as that was my following class, and told me that she found my paper. It was a frustrating victory. Sounds like a teacher I had once. Once gave the whole class detention because she left our homework in her car and forgot. She said it was an act of collective defiance. During my first year in school, which was 7th grade, I was bullied a lot. One time in class I told the teacher that this group of kids kept picking on me and she called them up front. All the kids lied their asses off and said nothing was happening. She asked a kid that was sitting close to me and she lied also. As a result, I was punished and was made to sit in the front of the class. Was never so embarrassed in my life. I have numerous stories from when I was younger of teachers stepping over their boundaries and being just terrible people. It is hard to pick just one. I just remember how it all started with my 6th grade teacher who would routinely put down an autistic student who was struggling with raising her hand and forgetting the answer to a question, telling her that she didn't have to raise her hand every time that she breathed. As a response, I told the principal and my teacher ended up finding out it was me who told on her, so she pulled me out of class and told me, "Don't you ever tell the principal about my teaching methods." To make the story even better, my family knew her mother-in-law and her mother-in-law hated her since she, my teacher, was notorious for throwing tantrums when her husband didn't do what she wanted. She sounded like the definition of a banshee. When I was in 3rd grade, I was bullied by this kid whose dad was in a horrific car bike accident and had to be hospitalized for a couple years. It wasn't like hardcore abuse bullying, it was more like teasing, but it still made going to school difficult for me. He made fun of my name. I have a traditional hard to pronounce Irish name, my accent, I have a thick regional accent, and my weight. I was a chubby kid. Mostly. One day he was making pig noises at me and I snapped and yelled, "Stop being a jerk." Our teacher then made the whole class sit in a circle and talk about how what I'd done was unacceptable and bullying is wrong. Then after class she pulls me aside, tells me that even though she knows he teases me, I have to suck it up because his dad isn't well in any way, he probably likes me. Looking back, I realized that the kid was acting out and needed therapy due to his situation. However, I was another kid and my teacher should not have put all that on me. The "he likes you, that's why he's treating you like hot garbage" thing needs to fricking die. Not my teacher, but my wife's teacher said she wouldn't amount to anything in life because she'd cry in kindergarten. She's a chief counsel advisor, corporate lawyer now, lol. In elementary school, we were doing an assignment that involved coloring, and the teacher said to color something green. I colored it red, and the teacher came over to me and asked why I wasn't paying attention, because she had clearly stated to color it green. I told her I did color it green, and she paddled me in front on the whole class for it. Turns out I'm colorblind. Even immediately giving you a colorblind test is better than what actually happened. We had to write a resume in my senior English class. When I listed the places I worked, the teacher docked me 2 points because she said I spelled one of the restaurants wrong by adding an E at the end. I told her that no, I spelled it correctly. It's on the sign, menus. etc. She didn't believe me and refused to give me those 2 points back. I'm still bitter about it. My English teacher senior year called me retarded and said I'd never amount to anything. Now I'm her co-worker and about to be tenured. Looks like we both amounted to the same thing, teach. 5th grade social studies. We had to write a 2-page essay by hand about a story whose main character was the otherwise nameless son of the King of Athens. Being equal parts clever and lazy, I shortened this to the Prince of Athens. The essay was competently written. Paper comes back as an F. No notes explaining the grade. So I ask the teacher what I did incorrectly. Did I not respond to the prompt? No. You answered the prompt correctly. Was it major grammar or spelling problems? No. Your grammar was fine. What then? You kept referring to the Prince of Athens. But there was only the son of the King of Athens. Isn't the son of a king a prince? Maybe. But that wasn't in the story. TLDR. Son of a king equals prince. Son of a B. Yes. My name is not a master. Son of King Solomon. King of the Magic Kingdom. But God forbid someone calls me prince, not a master. That is not the same thing at all. One teacher gave me 4 detentions in a year for fighting when I was in 5th grade. I 100% was getting my butt kicked. Every time. That teacher was a piece of garbage. I didn't want to eat a sausage roll one day, so I gave it away to someone. My teacher made me take it back and basically stopped the whole class to make them watch me eat it. Is your teacher Mrs. Trunchbull, but with sausage instead of cake? In grade 6 my Spanish teacher called me stupid in front of the whole class because I couldn't roll my R and say red correctly in Spanish. I was so pissed I just got up and left the room and refused to come back for the rest of the period. I took French in high school because of it and actually was really good at French, so Sonora, thanks for pushing me towards French because it actually worked out really well in my favor. I always notice that it's hard for English speaking people to roll their R's. You shouldn't be ashamed. I guess it's not a thing that comes naturally in English. Speech is weird. I was a child education major at a community college. I wanted to be an elementary teacher like my mom, and one day in English class my teacher was going around doing an icebreaker where everybody stands up and says their major. Well, when I told him mine was elementary education, he asked why. And I said because I love kids, and he replied, well, so did Michael Jackson. Let's just say I dropped out after that. God dang, that's not something you say as a teacher. My 8th grade geometry teacher made us use IXL. IXL should not be used. What learning practice program penalizes you for wrong points? It's infuriating to barely get to 90 and then the questions go on hard mode and give you only 1 point but push you back 10-15 for getting it wrong. IXL is not good for anyone who struggles with math. I had a math teacher in grade 8 that got fired for telling a Native American to go hunt buffalo. They said her leave was related to family problems, but everyone knew. To be fair, she did have family problems. Her family allowed her to be a racist. I struggled in 9th grade history. He showed my brother my test scores and grades, sometimes with other students in the room. This was all behind my back and without my permission. My grades are between me and the teacher, maybe parents. They are not my brother's business, and they are most definitely not the business of random kids in my brother's class. I'm now planning to become a teacher and am very passionate about this. My kids' grades will stay between me and them, and parents when necessary. If they want to tell someone, that's their choice. But it definitely will not be me. If you're in the US, sharing that kind of information is a big fat FERPA violation. Mr. Latentious wearing a black thong visible through his khaki pants every day. Like, do you bro? No judgment, but that's a bad look. Track and field. Everyone in the entire class got to go to track and field to do some sort of event, regardless of how crappy they actually were at it. Except me. The teacher just decided that everyone would be included in this thing. All 29 of them, except me. So while the rest of the class was out in the field area during gym class practicing their various events, the teacher handed me a basketball and relegated me to the outside basketball court, which was like 100 yards away from where they were, and told to just stay there until gym class was over. I was there alone for like an hour and a half with nothing but a basketball, slowly dying inside. Wondering why me? I was like 11 years old and far from the least athletic kid in class. You couldn't find one event for me to compete in? This happened numerous times in the lead up to the track and field event. Everyone would go out to practice. I'd get a basketball. 19 years later and I'll never forget how isolated and crappy you made me feel by doing that. Frick you to death. Giving me a C on my final exam in maths equals. My grade in maths became C when I was 2 points from B. Would have gotten the points if my handwriting had been clearer. The teacher couldn't see that my answer was correct and therefore never gave me the points. I notified the teacher of this, but since he only corrects one mistake, that would make the person's grade higher if corrected each semester. He didn't want to fix it. He gladly removed points when he noticed that he shouldn't have given them though. A classmate of mine went from A to B in this manner. Edit. Changed since he only corrects one person's score to only corrects one mistake. For clarity, added last sentence and fixed some typos. That's a stupid freaking policy. Sorry, I only admit to fault one time per year. A teacher gave me a wrong answer because I said England and not the United Kingdom. I even showed the reading that pointed out England and she gave me detention for undermining her. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.